folks. Welcome to Between Awesome and Disaster. This is your host, Will Carey. Thank you for listening if you're new, and thank you so much, everybody, for all of the wonderful feedback and compliments and sharing of my recent episode with MC Lars. I've gotten a lot of really positive things sent to me, so thank you very much, and I'm glad that you guys have enjoyed it. So thank you. As I'm recording this, I am about 24 hours away from getting on a plane to England with my girlfriend. I'll be in London, Liverpool, and then for a couple of days I'll be going to Edinburgh, and then we'll be coming back through Dublin. So I've been trying to set up some stand-up dates in England, but I found that comedy clubs in the UK book really far in advance, so I haven't been able to find a set just yet. If not, I might just be a tourist, and the World Cup is, of course, starting in about a week, so I intend to partake in the festivities that are in line with that. Being in a country that is A, super passionate about football, and B, in the World Cup this year, unlike my own country. So I'm looking forward to it and hoping to meet up with some comedian friends of mine that live in London. Hopefully I'll be able to bring you some more episodes while I travel. If not, I will have something that I can share with you. On the show today is my buddy, comedian Neruda Williams. Neruda I've known for several years. I met him when I was going to shows at a Ethiopian restaurant in Harlem on 125th named Cafe Addis. And he's a very funny guy, and I've seen him around, but I didn't really know him. So we had a really in-depth, intense conversation. This conversation is going to kind of come to you in two 45-minute chunks. The first one is, the New York is very much about New York and comedy and kind of coming up in New York when Neruda did in the late 80s, early 90s. And then we take a quick break, and then the second half is a very intense and emotional and revelatory conversation that I was very appreciative of, that he was appreciative of him sharing with me. So I hope you guys enjoy it, and I'll touch base with you briefly in between parts and then a little bit at the end. But I'm really excited to share this with you because this was a very emotional episode. So let's go to my chat with Neruda Williams, everyone. Just boom, and we're doing it. All right.
Will, thanks for having me, man.
Dude, it's been a while since I've seen you, Neruda. I'm glad. Yeah, I think the last couple of times I've seen you, I think I used to see you a lot when I was like up at Cafe Addis occasionally in Harlem. Right. I was going there pretty frequently for a few years ago, and then the last time I was seeing you, I was I saw you when you were doing improv.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I was the tech on those shows.
Right, that is where. Yes. Mimi, right? Is it Mimi Hoops at the Pit Loft?
Yeah, the Pit Loft, and what's your team's name again?
Well, that's my old team, Straight White Men.
That's who I saw.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I saw, and I was like, oh, Neruda's doing improv. That's awesome. I always like when I see comedians branch out because I don't know if you've had this experience. I think we've been doing stand-up kind of around the same amount of time. Like when you start, like you have these group of people that are like featured players or
right.
principals in your movie of your rise in comedy.
Right.
And then you don't see them for a while, and then you're like, what happened to those people? Did they get real
I
jobs?
know what happened to them. They're all on television. For me.
That is in my case too. a lot of the time. I was like, I like that. I like that though. I like seeing people like get out of the circle of hell that can be open mics.
It is, and then even after you get out of the ring of open mic, there is an interesting thing that happens where I know guys that like when I started had been doing it for 20, 25 years.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
And they might be passed at the local clubs and they might do road, but they're still kind of stuck in another circle of hell, you know? And then now there's a point that I'm kind of at, and I see other comics that have I didn't really start with, but that like I've seen come up, where it's like you're on the bar show rung, right? Like you could work out new material at a show if you wanted to because you get booked so much a week,
right?
But so you're not stuck in the open mic scene anymore, but you're still stuck in a certain
in a loop,
right? And it's like, well, when do I do the show that gets the attention of everybody? What spot of Knitting Factory do I have to get for the guy that books, late night to put me on? Like,
right? Yeah.
So, it's a weird thing that we do, and go ahead.
It definitely, I definitely agree with you. Just like that, and like everywhere, like if you're looking at a place you want to be, there's someone in that place that's bemoaning the fact that they're in that place. That's like I've never performed at the Knitting Factory, and I'm always I never got to do like UCB Monday nights.
Whiplash.
Yeah. Like I never got to do that in the old space, or even Cabin, like these big shows, and just the idea of like being able to treat like a bar show as like, oh, I have some new ideas I want to work through.
Right.
It seems like a luxury at times. Like I'm always like, I got to do well because it's people ask me to be here. I got to do well.
Right. And by the way, I don't know who's gonna hear this, but like the producers of Cabin, of Knitting Factory, and of what was the show that Wyatt Cenac used to host?
Night Train.
They've all invited me to do spots. Or for whatever reason, it hasn't worked out for me. So anybody listening to this some geek, some fucking asshole is going to email you like, Neruda actually never did those things, but I have been invited, but I just wasn't able to make it, or something else happened.
Yeah. Life just happens a lot more. As the career goes on, life I think begins to happen more and more, and then just trying to. My struggle is like maintaining the balance of now that I have like a human person life and a career that's not being a full-time performing stand-up, but is in the comedy world, and like still trying to balance all these passions. If anything, it makes me feel less like sad and desperate, but I'm also keenly aware of wanting to still write new jokes and get better, because I love I love getting on stage still, which is important. And
the audience doesn't know this, but I've been complimenting you since I got here. Your real person life is doing really well, and
thank you.
It's very beautiful and very comforting and very homely, and bright, which I think is so essential. Like, you know what I mean? Like sometimes, especially as artists, we're bogged down. Like I know me. Like I live with my girlfriend too, and we, she's decorated the place. I have some artwork up, but for the most part, it's her stuff.
Yeah.
But my section of our bedroom is just papers and like half-read books and just pens and it's a downer. It's a downer, and like half-written jokes, and it's a downer. And so this is beautiful. Like I think this will help your mental health space coming to something so bright.
I think so, and that's something I never thought about. Like when I first moved to New York. Like when I first moved to New York, I was like living with a stripper and her 2 cats, and I didn't have any furniture at all except for a bed.
Healthy.
Yeah, and like all my clothes were just kind of in boxes, and like just the idea of the comedian as this sort of like tortured person who like is constantly can't get their shit together. Having like just a really nice bright lamp,
right,
or an accent wall. I've realized just looking at a bright color, just looking at a color that you like and picked out, you can just kind of go, huh, yeah, I did that.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. And I know that most people like don't have the luxury, especially if you're renting in New York. But
right. Your life is kind of transient. Like, I mean, even if you have an apartment, I feel like in New York City, number one, you probably have 18,000 roommates.
Yeah.
And so your life is always kind of transient. You know, the next roommate takes your knives. You know, there's always something that you have to replace, something that you have to keep hidden. Sometimes you have to move. And because of that, I think a lot of especially new New Yorkers, never fully get to the place where they can be emotionally safe. Does that make sense?
Oh, definitely. And like people talk about how dating in New York is so hard. Like that combined with that emotional safeness allows, I think, gives you the freedom to be vulnerable,
Right.
especially with like another person,
Right.
or even like vulnerable on stage. Like I feel coming up in New York, and maybe you could tell me, because you're born and raised in New York, yeah.
Born and raised, yeah.
Born
yeah.
and raised. See, so is my girlfriend. She was born and raised in Prospect Heights when it wasn't a nice place to be.
I actually have family. I'm from Harlem, but I have family that grew up in, like, I have a bunch of family from Queensbridge for generations too.
Mm-hmm.
So when I first got off at 21st Street,
Yeah.
I walked into Queensbridge projects, like, because that's what I thought we were going, and then got totally turned around. Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, well, even this building, like I wanted to tell you, and we'll get into a little bit, because you're complimenting like the how nice the apartment looks. I think, and my girlfriend could tell you better, I believe this was an old Mitchell-Lama building, and when we first got this place, it was like, I think the original what they put in the 50s, so like really dark brown linoleum floors and like very bare bones.
This is beautiful. You guys can't see this, but they have this beautiful hardwood floors. Oh my God. And now I'm starting to notice how new they are. Wow. Amazing.
Yeah, I lucked out.
Yeah, you did. So you were asking me, yes, I'm from New York. I started comedy in New York, and your girlfriend's from New York. And
Yeah, so I think starting in New York, and even once you're established doing in New York, if you're doing like the bar shows, or you got like spots at like New York Comedy Club or Stand Up New York, there's always this mental image, I think, that New York comics have of like the audience like sticking like a fist in their face, like not punching them, but just like and pushing it like right here, like, you know, I better laugh at this next joke or it could hurt you.
Interesting. You know what's funny? Obviously, because I started here, audiences in many other places where they don't have the
Kind of like the reservoir of
like
places to perform.
Like every time they go home, there's not some homeless person shitting and some other person masturbating, and there's not all this excitement happening. You know, they're taking the 405 home, and it's gonna be quiet and it's gonna be stars.
Yeah.
Here, our audiences are a little bit more entertained just by their natural day, their regular commute.
Yeah.
So starting here, I feel like, especially when I was doing like, you know, those Midtown clubs, you know, LOLs and all those things, like with the tourists, you know, Broadway Comedy Club, all that stuff.
Yeah.
You have to start hard, and you have to start funny, and then you have some time in the middle to drag along, but you still have to keep the pace of it, and you have to close hard for them to remember you when you're standing at the bar and they're leaving. You know?
Yeah.
So that sets you apart a little bit if you practice that regularly, and you can achieve that regularly when you go out into other places. But at the same token, I gotta say, doing road comedy in Ohio, I was in Toledo at the Funny Bone. Like,
when was this?
This was like 2010, 2011, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like my first road gig or whatever. And then eventually I did other places, but like that Midwestern type of idea, like this there's a whole middle of the country. We're talking about Canada.
Yeah.
There's also that here. But those places, except they have strip malls and they have comedy clubs. And I feel like every time I've done those places, I felt more afraid. Like, yo, if I don't say the right thing, and I haven't done it since Trump has been president.
Right.
I don't know if that's lucky. As a comedian, I say it's not, because I want that guala, but I want that guapington. But, you know,
of course.
But as far as not having to deal with intense, you know, no tact, no filter audiences, I'm kind of happy that I'm not on the road and being in a liberal bubble of New York, or going to LA and doing the store or something like that. There's a little bit of safety there with the audience itself. And I get what you're saying, though, because here, especially a person, like if there's an audience of New Yorkers, right? Like let's say you do Mocha or some shit like that. It's going to be an intense experience for you, like as a performer. You know what I mean?
I've heard of Mocha. I've never performed on it, but I've heard tale of its. if you falter, the audience will turn on you
Right.
immediately.
I don't like that term. It's not turn on you. It's catching the weakness, dude. Because you would do the same thing to a heckler. You would do the same thing to an audience that's actually being soft. If an audience is being super quiet and you could attack something to get them hype, you would do it.
Yeah.
And that's all.
That's a good way of looking at it. That's
right.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah, that's a better way of looking at it.
So, these intense audiences, what they're really doing is they want to have a good time. And if you're not going to do it for them, they're going to do it for themselves.
Right.
And you don't want that.
Yeah.
Obviously.
You want to be the good. You don't want to be you want the story to be, man, that guy was really funny, and not, oh, man, remember when we made that guy cry on stage?
Yeah, that was really funny.
That was great. Man, I love doing that. I'm really funny.
Remember we made that guy quit his dreams? That was really funny. So I do think there is an intensity to a proper New York audience or a proper New York show, in the bowels of, shitty, smelly, pee smelling New York City. But I'm not as afraid as I am in West Bubblefuck Nowhere, to be totally honest.
Yeah. I wonder if that's because this is where you're from. So this is like your comfort zone in a way. Whereas I'm from Bumblefuck, and I'm pretty content. One thing that I've realized is that I'm pretty good at doing nothing. Whereas my girlfriend cannot do nothing.
Right.
If she's idle for like 2 days, she will go insane.
Right.
So I hear what you're saying. There's a certain alien quality to your environment. The idea that there is this I'm trying to think of a great example. Like Bill Hicks tells this old story of a hell gig in the 80s of how
every gig in the 80s.
they performing in a disco, and they cut the music off to start the show and put the mic in the middle of the dance floor, the disco ball still going, and he was literally,
I know the story too.
Yeah, you know the one I'm talking about, and the one where the guys he was on tour with literally were waving the check and saying, "Let's go now."
Yeah.
Having the fear of do you have that fear if you're in featuring at the Toledo Funny Bone or the Cleveland Improv, that it could turn into I gotta run?
You know what's funny? No. Oh, well, yes. Yes. Actually, but not because I'm not funny enough, and not because the music stops and now they're fucking mad at me, but because of something I said, which is very different from, for instance, I played Bensonhurst, Bensonhurst, Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
And it's a fucking Russian dance club. And they did the same thing. And it's all these young Russian fake, mob guys. They're not really mob, but they all dress like it. They all think they're acting like they all got their pretty little Ivankas next to them,
Yeah, they've all got the airs.
Right.
That's sort of uber tight-knit community.
Right. And it's I'm sitting there. I can't remember who I'm with. Someone who listened to this probably knows exactly who I was with somebody. And then they had these things that were about this size. There's a table, guys. I have to describe it, right? There's a table, wooden table here.
Yeah.
It's about this size, and you had to get on it and then do your set while people are drinking and we're just listening to DMX on couches. And they're Russian, fake oligarchs. And I did my set, and they kind of laughed, kind of tuned me out. One guy was engaging me, and I do socio-political humor with a lot of silly twists. I do stuff with monkey business and sea turtles and things like that. So this guy was just engaging me on the facts of the words I was saying.
Right.
And that was great. That was good enough. But so situations like that, of course, this wasn't the 80s. Of course, this was 2012 or some shit like that. But at the same token, getting prepped for that in a place like New York, or even, I performed for 2 months in LA. I did the store and other things, but there were some rough bar shows out there too. But I don't want to compare that to this. But I think that especially in New York, the skin you develop, it's just different.
I agree. I want to trace this a little bit because as someone who idolized New York City for a really long time before I lived here, I'm kind of interested in trace this. How old are you?
I'm 34.
You're 34. Okay, you're a couple years older than me. So you're born in 84.
Right.
Okay. So you're growing up in Harlem in the 80s.
Right. Late 80s, early 90s. Early to late 90s. Yeah.
What's the vibe in the city at that time?
What's the vibe in the city? When I was a kid, it was very like KRS-One, the bridge is over. It was like, remember, so my older brother is a guy named Khalil Zulu Williams. And he's a famous graffiti artist named Serge, like his tag is Serge One. And he's a part of a crew called FCTC5. And they started a company called PNB Nation, which was one of the first urban fashion brands. And he developed and designed like Fat Farm's logo and all that stuff. So when I was a real little kid, like I hung out with like Tribe Called Quest and Jungle Brothers and all those people as a little kid. You see, there's a photo of me with KRS-One just recently as an older man. That's from when I was performing in Amsterdam. But the reason why we hung out all day was because he knew who my brother was.
Wow.
And so when I was a little kid, that was the vibe in New York City was this whole city has been burnt down since the 70s. And hip hop has allowed an opportunity for people to make money. So people like Puff Daddy and Jay-Z were all kind of first burgeoning. Biggie, Tupac was kind of the
so
thing.
This is like Biggie's like demo tape era.
That's when I grew up.
When he's like in the Unsype hype column in The Source.
Right. That's when I'm taking the train by myself to school. That's when, you know what I mean? Like I'm smoking weed and cutting class and kind of developing the personality that I would become, right?
Is this like middle school, high school?
Yeah, this is middle school. This is even maybe elementary school.
Where were you going to middle school?
So before we get to even middle school though.
Oh, sure.
So.
And you just have the one brother?
Yeah, just have the one older brother.
Okay.
We have different mothers though. My mother's Colombian. His mother is Japanese. And his mother is the granddaughter, the daughter of a woman named Yuri Kochiyama. Do you know who Yuri Kochiyama is?
I don't think I do.
Yuri Kochiyama is a very famous Japanese civil rights worker. She got like a Google thing when she died 3 years ago. Anyway, she's famous for Americans and blacks because she's the little Japanese lady that caught Malcolm X when he was assassinated.
Oh, yeah?
Right.
Like as he was falling to the ground?
Right. So that Japanese woman in that photo is my brother's grandmother.
Holy shit.
Right. So when I was coming up, like, he was this huge hip hop giant. You know, he did the graffiti for Juice, the movie, so all that Rough House stuff is all him. And so he knew Queen Latifah and Tupac. Like, it was just that. So when I was coming up, it was like this whole city has burnt down, but we have young black men and women using this thing to circumvent what white society had built.
Yeah.
Right? Like, white society had built, Harvard. White society had built, the, financial markets. White society had built all these different avenues for young white kids from Long Island or from wherever outside of New York, Connecticut or whatever.
Yeah, heirs to the throne, basically. Right. The Ivy League and like the downtown like nice suit, and you get a big house away from the New York.
But over, just 20 blocks away from here, they burn that shit down. The Bronx, they burn that shit down. Yeah. Brooklyn, they burn that shit down. Harlem, they burn. So I grew up with abandoned buildings and like playing manhunt and like playing crate ball and doing this whole world, not really realizing who my brother was, but just knowing like I was always kind of treated very well, you know? And then we can get into my dad in a second and my family legacy in a second, but
of course,
when you ask me about early New York, that was my experience. My experience was like going to block parties and house parties where the sound system is connected to the lamp post. So the lamp is out, but there's lamps and lights booming the whole block, and being able to go and hang out behind the DJ booth,
There's a certain cool factor that you have. Right. There's the sort of like the only thing I could possibly compare it to is you've seen Goodfellas?
Yeah, I've seen Goodfellas.
So the scene where he and his girlfriend at the time, later wife in the movie, they circumvent the line, they go back and he's table, like they're shaking hands like, hey, how you doing? Like, for lack of a better word, like a hookup. the hookup. There's that sort of like the nod you can get.
That's a great, that's not a, there's no, I don't think there's a better term for it. So between the ages of like 6, 7 until I was about 15, my life felt like the hookup.
Yeah.
You know? So that's the way I would answer that question.
That's really interesting. And just the fact that like this familial connection is like so close to this important to Malcolm X, this huge like person in like Black history and in American history,
and in Harlem,
in Harlem specifically,
right.
like where you're from, to like have this 6 degrees of separation be like basically four people. Mm-hmm. That's got to be insane.
And in families, yeah, it is. So I mean, when people talk to me about old New York, I'm so nostalgic for it.
Yeah.
Like, it's over the top nostalgic, and I think it kind of gets gross for most people. Like, you know, most people want to hear about, you know, saucy for 42nd Street and this and the third, and, you know, just how gritty and dangerous and scary it was. I used to ride, like, the A train is crazy now.
Yeah.
So imagine it in 89, 90, 91, 1993. I used to ride it by myself as a little kid.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I've definitely seen like every now and then there'll be like a New York subway in the 80s sort of photo thing, and they're like, a lot of graffiti.
Right. My brother was getting up. You know what I mean? Like, my brother was up on those. My brother was in some of those books that show photos of that stuff. And I remember him hanging out, like, you know, they would meet at places like Queensbridge over here, like these main thoroughfares where all the trains kind of meet, and they would have guys who write they had black books, these leather black sketchbooks, and they would all get up in each other's books, and like, if you met a new crew, if you didn't have beef with them, because they, you know, it's all this dumb shit, right? They buffed your piece or whatever.
Sure, yeah.
But if you didn't, you know, you guys would share sketches, share color schemes. And this created basically what we know as fashion today, by the way. Like, all those kids, all my brother's friends now are the top fashion designers for Nike, for Perry Ellis, for all these big fashion houses, Versace, all this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah, because that's like they created the aesthetic that eventually gets co-opted by corporate America and white America.
Right.
And well, I'm glad that these companies are hiring them. I'm glad to hear that. That's fascinating to me. That's like when you think of like the stereotypical idea of what art school is, like in like a college or university setting, it pales in comparison to what you just described to me.
I would agree, right? Because the piece that you put up for your senior project might not get you cut or killed. Like, these guys were, you know, he tells me stories about going to the train yards and doing full cars, and then cops raiding the train yard, like waiting for them. Kids. I mean, these kids are 14, 15.
Like teenagers.
Right. I mean, my brother's a brilliant artist. I mean, he can draw literally what he's looking at, exactly the way it looks, with his hand instantly.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's a practice thing, but I think he's always kind of had the talent to an extent. But it's honed when you have a time limit and you have a possible charge coming.
When there's possible legal ramifications.
Right. So it's honed. Your focus is honed. And yeah, those guys became, you know, I mean, he's an incredible artist now, obviously, but yeah, I think that's 5 or 6 years of your young developing life where you're running through train yards, drawing these, you know, things that are as tall as you that you can see from another borough.
Yeah.
So your name could be up there, and doing it beautifully.
And discreetly and quick. And so much very intricate, not to disrespect Keith Haring, because I like his work as well. Keith Haring's doing a similar thing, subway art, but like the lines are all very simple, like his character style.
He is brilliant though. But
he's brilliant, and I love what he does. But like compared to like in like the lettering work that early graffiti has, to be able to do that and evade arrest,
right?
I would love that. Should be a final exam.
That should be a right.
I think we just came up with a class.
I think it's great. I'm a harsh dude, man. I don't know. Have you ever seen the show 60 Days In?
Yeah, a couple of times.
Right?
Yes, I have.
I think that you know how every episode or every season there's like two people that are like, I want to be corrections officers or I want to be blah 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 in law enforcement, right? And then they do it and they can't make 3 days or some shit, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, actually some of them do, but my whole point is this: I think anybody who goes to the police academy or anybody that goes into one of those type or corrections officers, any of that stuff, you should have to do that. You should have to do 60 days in the American penal system. And if you can't take it, and if you can't see the injustices in it, you don't deserve, nor do you have the responsibility to be a person encaging other people. You know what I mean? Like, if you can't take that cage, and also I think it would change the way you did encage other people. Like, every one of them usually comes out of it thinking, I don't think I ever want to do this again. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I want to put people in this.
Yeah. Yeah, but if your job's going to have to be too, you're going to want to make sure that you're maybe going to want to think on a more rehabilitative side.
I would hope so.
Like, you know, the law says I got to put you in here, but I've got to, while you're here, I got to make sure I got to do something so that you don't come back.
Right. And the thing is that when we get privatized prisons, and really, you know what? I'm sick of that. I'm going to stop saying that. That is some libtard shit. This is a privatized country, right? Like, what am I talking about? It's so... Look,
When you get into this idea of like whoever's got money can control things that and industries that maybe shouldn't be focused on profit, should maybe be focused on something else,
and but we're not going to change the idea of profit. You're never going to change that, right?
Yeah.
But what you can change are the people that work within this. And if we had more people going into corrections as a health first idea, as a rehabilitation first idea, and not as a punishment idea, not as a punitive idea. I'm talking about the workforce there, not the managers, not the owners of these buildings. I'm talking about people that actually work there. If they're not there,
who are interacting with people,
if they're not there for a power grab, if they're not megalomaniacs, then this system changes on its own. Because I can't put you in a cage without food. I can't leave you in a dorm with a rapist and 10 murderers and not think about your safety and check on you more often. I can't do that if I think of you as a human being and as a patient. Now, if I think of you as just trash, as just another number on a column that increases my daily quota and my paycheck at the end of the week, sure. I mean, you're a digit. Get the fuck in there. Who cares, homie?
Exactly.
So I think that changes everything. I don't expect the owner of Lockheed Martin, who I'm sure also owns lots of other things, that subsidiary might own a private prison, is ever thinking about those people. And you know what? This might be harsh, but it's not his fucking job. That's not his job.
Yeah.
The empathy falls on the person putting the cuffs on you.
Yeah. And one of the best ways to create empathy is through experience. Like that's brilliant. I love your the way you examine and break down ways to affect positive change in the world is so beautiful and succinct, and I love it.
Thanks. Thank you.
It's the same principle of like everyone should have to wait tables at least once.
I agree with that too.
Everyone should have to work retail because maybe you'll think before you throw a fit about something being out of stock or asking for ranch dressing with French fries, like that old Daniel Tosh joke.
Right, that's a good one. Yeah, he's a meanie, but yeah,
he is. But that one was pretty on.
But it's on the money. Yeah.
So this is what you're. I have a feeling based on your life growing up that these seeds of the way you think so brilliantly gets implanted early because you're around it.
Right. Yeah.
So you mentioned your dad a little bit. So I'm curious, what was he like? So what did your mom and dad do?
Okay, so my mom and dad, I don't know what the official story is. They're both kind of liars, for very good reasons. I mean, my dad is from a place called Beartown, in Macomb, Mississippi. And he's one of 12 brothers and sisters.
Yeah.
And his great-great-grandmother, or great-grandmother rather, my great-great-grandmother, his great-grandmother was a woman named Gentry, and she fell in love with another slave named Jacob. And I don't know. For some reason, the master, I do know, but I don't know if I really want to say it. But
Sure.
she ended up being able to save enough money to buy Jacob's freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And back then, that was the smartest thing. Number one, she couldn't buy her own freedom.
Right.
Right? That was illegal anyway. But number two, even if someone were to buy her freedom, as a woman, especially as a Negro woman, she can't have a bank account. She can't own property. She can't do anything. So she bought Jacob's freedom. And Jacob then began sharecropping. And so he then bought her freedom. And then, yeah, so my family was... I hate to say freed because that's not the word, and I feel like it does a disservice to what these people went through.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you could say, oh well, they didn't have to work the fields for massa, but they still had to work the fields for massa. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and they still felt the levels of discrimination that I will never know.
Right.
My dad tells me stories about him and his friends being shot at by a local white farm owner at that point when he was a kid, just for dipping their feet and taking a swim in the local pond that happened to border this man's property.
Right.
And he would shoot at children, but they're not children to him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now imagine 2 generations before that, right?
Even worse.
Right. So, but what it did do for Jacob and the Williams family of that strain was it established a certain amount of economic space.
Right.
Right. And so that allowed for my father and pretty much all of his brothers, except for maybe 1 or 2, got college educations. And my father actually graduated high school when I think he was like 14 or 15, and he took what was called the
in
Freedom.
Mississippi.
Yeah, Mississippi. Took what was called the Freedom Riders buses up to New York, and he ended up writing a play, which I believe starred Yuri's daughter, my brother's mother, Audie. And then he went to CUNY, and then he got his PhD in sociology. And then with a guy named Bill Kornblum, they wrote their first bestseller, New York Times bestseller. I think it's called Growing Up Poor. And I think then my dad wrote Cocaine Kids and Crack House. I think both hit the charts and made those rounds, and so he became kind of a sociology, like an academic celebrity. He's put together films like Harlem Diary for Discovery Channel, and there's been feature films based on his work. And then and now he's a tenured professor at the New School, and he's taught at Princeton and
Teaching sociology.
Teaching sociology, but specifically he focuses on hustlers, pimps, drugs, drug dealers, and black urban communities, and how they are economically and socially economically affected by the world, and how they fight back towards that. But that's my regurgitation of what I think he writes about. But he's got, he's the most published sociologist, contemporary sociologist of his field.
That's amazing. What's his full name?
Terry Williams.
Terry Williams.
Terry M. Williams.
Terry M. Williams. Yeah. Wow, that's amazing, dude.
Yeah.
That's like talking about clawing your way up from the bottom.
Right. But yeah, right. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
Well, just thinking about like everything that was probably thrown in his way to be able to get there, and
can't imagine it.
And to be where he is now. I bet he's an incredible professor. I bet I would hope his students hang on his every word, because holy shit.
Yeah, they love him, and he does a great job. I mean, I think he's a very, very intriguing guy. And so then I guess he met my mom around 79, 80. I think my mom was working as like a golden plate lady at Studio 54. And her mother is first generation from Colombia. And so she grew up in Queens. And
what part?
Bayside.
Bayside is way out there.
Yeah. And yeah, my mom, she's a very vibrant party girl. And so they kind of, I don't know, they made a connection that didn't last as long as I guess I would have liked it to.
Sure.
But it lasted how it should have lasted.
Yeah.
And, she loves to say how she helped him write his first notes for his first, books and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, she didn't have, I don't even know if she finished high school. I don't even know. I know she didn't go to college. And I know that her lifestyle was just a little bit too wild. And what he really liked to do, what he became famous for is that he involves himself, right? Like, he's the guy that goes deep into these worlds, and he just hangs out with pimps for like 2-3 years. He hangs out in Washington Heights with these, Dominican drug dealers, for 2-3 years, and becomes a part of their life.
Yeah.
From a social scientific space, right? Which was, at that point was very different. Like, now everyone's doing documentaries on you if you're someone.
Oh yeah, of course. I can't imagine trying to earn a drug dealer's trust or a pimp's trust over that length of time.
Right.
Man, that's a dedication to your to your subject.
Whereas my mom, she earned the trust too, but that's because she was actually doing the shit. Like, she was really down. Like, she was really in. And my father always had a little bit of a separation between being in and being trusted, I think is a good word.
Yeah.
And so I think that separation kind of happened. And my mom, she just, so from about 5 until I think maybe 16 or 17, she wasn't a part of my life. It was just me and my dad and my brother and my dad's various girlfriends.
Right. Yeah. So it's you, your brother, and your dad. So you have this connection to like the hip hop world. So it almost seemed destined you were going to be in some form of entertainment field.
You know what? Now I look back on it,
now that I'm thinking about it, when you describe it to me, and given like the wildness of Studio 54, talking about old New York spots, like having just, even if your mom wasn't around, just that peripheral, I guess maybe knowledge or later knowledge.
Yeah.
Wow. What was the name of his play?
I actually don't know. I can't remember. Because I was told it, but I don't know what it is.
Because if it's been produced anywhere else, I gotta imagine if it hasn't been produced in a while, I think it'd be cool if you did it.
Redo it. Yeah, that might be cool.
Yeah.
I'll ask him about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I bet you could get like under St. Mark's or like the Name Factory.
Yeah.
I bet a place like that would love something like that.
Yeah, you know what? Thank you, Will. That's actually a good idea for some content to create. Yeah.
No problem, man. If I can help another creative person, then I feel like I've done something good.
This is great.
Awesome.
Can we take a quick break?
Yeah, of course. So we've hit the halfway point of my interview with comedian Neruda Williams. At this point, I want to let you know that Neruda had to take a quick bathroom break. We made ourselves some fresh drinks, and then the second half of the conversation starts with me asking, when Neruda came in over to my place to do the interview, his arm was in a sling, and I had thought to ask him about it before the podcast, but it ended up that I asked him much later on. So this question kind of sparks one of the more personal conversations that I think I've had on this show. But I think it's important, and it's important to share because there's a lot of really personal, revelatory stuff that if you're wrestling with similar emotions, maybe it can help. I don't personally have the experience to understand, but maybe someone out there does. So let's go to my second part of my interview with Neruda. So let me just ask you real quick, as I forgot to ask you up top. Neruda's left arm's in a sling right now. How did that happen?
My birthday is April 24th,
Oh, mine's April 23rd.
Really?
Yeah.
Happy belated, buddy.
You too, buddy.
Thank you. So that night I did a spot at Grizzly Pear, and we had a few drinks or whatever. And I don't know, I was working on some new shit, and I wasn't that happy about the set. And so I left a little bit earlier than I usually would.
Yeah.
And I go and I get on the train at West 4th. And I'm like, just in my phone playing Scrabble, like listening to the new Cardi B, just kind of, what everybody is doing, right? Like I look around right now, like everybody's in their phone.
Yeah.
No one is looking up and looking around. But yeah, it just happens that on this particular night, there was some dude, and he walks up to me, and I look up, and then he snatches my headphones out of my ears.
Ooh.
Right. And I'm like, what the fuck are you doing, dude?
Yeah.
And then as I'm doing that, I'm not fully focused on my phone. The doors go ding dong, and he snatches the phone. And he runs through the doors trying to catch that last ding dong.
Yeah.
So that I get trapped there and he just has the phone.
Right.
I get out. And I chase him. And so now we're running around the platform, and like we're running in circles like Warner Brothers cartoons, like around the fucking bench. And finally I catch him, and we scuffle. We wrestled and scuffled, and he ends up getting me on my back and getting my arm. I'm like trying to protect myself, I think, with this arm, and trying to swing with my dominant, which is the right. And he gets this arm down and breaks it with his foot.
Oh my God.
Like on some, it was gruesome. So now I'm like shouting, and I'm in shock, and I'm in pain, and he runs off with my phone. I go to the cops, who happen to be like, right up at the exit, and they were dealing with some other kid, right? Like some...
Yeah, if it's a weekend at that stop, it's a zoo.
Right. So they're dealing with some kid who hopped the train or some dumb shit. I don't know what he is in for. If you listen to this kid, I don't know what you're in for. You're probably innocent, but whatever. They're dealing with this kid, and my arm looks like a jigsaw puzzle.
Right.
So I am flipping out, and I'm telling them, like, fuck this kid, get me an ambulance, and go get this guy that took my phone. They're just dealing with it like New York City cops. Like, okay, man, wait in line, take a number.
Right.
Finally, a ambulance comes. It gets me, takes me to the hospital, and then I think like 2 a.m. they had given me like ketamine, and like they like iodined my arm, and they were like prepping me for like that initial cast or whatever. And two random cops that I didn't know come in, they shackle my feet, and they handcuff my loose arm. And I'm...
Oh, Jesus fucking Christ.
Right. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? And they said there was a bystander on the platform, and they got stabbed in the leg during your scuffle. And we showed them your photo, and they said you're the person that stabbed them in the leg. And the box cutter got caught in their leg and then fell. And they have been bleeding out for like 3 stops. Now they were in the hospital not far from where I was. And I'm like, great. Like, I didn't fucking stab him. Why are you handcuffing me? Apparently, since they didn't catch the other guy, I'm the only suspect they had. And this person just saw 2 black people chasing each other, so they don't know exactly which one stabbed.
They couldn't tell you from the other guy.
Right. And they only have my photo. So according to the police and this person, I'm the guy. And what my lawyer and I have realized is that what was really happening is the reason why he broke my arm was because he didn't expect me to chase him in the first place.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
And what I didn't realize is also the reason why he broke my arm is because he had thought that he had pulled his box cutter to cut me. But he's such a bad fucking criminal. Like, he's a worse criminal than I was an open micer. He gets the fucking thing caught in a dude trying to get on the train's leg instead of my throat. And then he has no other choice when we're fighting but to break my fucking arm. Because other than that...
Because it sounds like he's losing the fight.
He's losing everything. I mean, just the snatch was bad. Everything that he did was bad.
Yeah, everything he wanted to have happen has not happened.
Right. And after a month and a half of thinking about it, as a dude that actually likes gutter niggas, I do feel bad for him. I'm like, yo, I get it. You were in a bad position. You know what I mean? You had to do what you had to do. It was his fucking hard up luck that he got me as his Vic. And I think what he saw was a drunk, fairly nice looking black guy. You know what I mean? Like,
he doesn't think you could fight, probably.
Right, and he doesn't think I'm gonna chase him either. Like, also, that's another thing I have to think about every fucking day is that who is this fake tough uncle that's on my shoulder telling me I have to be a man, I can't get punked, and I can't let someone take my stuff, and da 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 da. Just talking to you, making you do this dumb shit. Don't chase anybody. Give them the thing. Give them your wallet. Give them your credit cards. Give them your money. Give them the phone. Give them the shit.
Yeah.
You have a life. You have a beautiful fucking girlfriend and a home to go back to.
Yeah.
That person doing this to you does not.
Right.
And they will do anything they can to get a semblance of that. And being a tough guy or being a hero will get you killed.
Right.
And had this 1 second mistake not happened, number one, the first mistake was me chasing him. He did not expect to be chased. He's probably some, mid-20s or teenager kid just snatching the phone to get a couple $100.
Right.
Most people just leave it alone. You got insurance. Just leave it alone.
Get it replaced the next day.
It's my fake black, I'm from the hood tough guy shit that made me chase this guy. And then I chase him. Now we both look like fools.
Right.
Right? No one knows who's who. Just two black guys being niggerish. You can't say this, but I can.
No, yeah, I wasn't going to say that.
I know. And then him getting the box cutter stuck was his second, like, fuck. If I just flashed at this dude, he would have stopped. But I don't have my box cutter anymore. Where'd my box cutter go? You know what? It went to the place where all idiots things go. The dumb fucking place. Like, you fucking idiot. Like, he had no plan, and he was desperate. And so I just kind of feel bad for his dumb ass. But, he tried to cut me and ended up cutting somebody else. So now I'm in the hospital, and they're charging me with assault. Assault 2 with a deadly weapon 3. Yeah.
Jesus Christ. Is that still pending?
Yeah. My next court date is the 27th.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I might save this. Is it possible I might have to save this part for after the trial's over?
If you want, I don't know.
Well, you just tell me I can sit on it if you want, but
I don't care.
I'm also wondering because, okay, New York DA, because I think I might know your name. My friend Neruda is obviously, if you've been listening, not a violent person. Not a violent person. I would trust this guy with my life. If I had a kid, I would trust him with that kid.
Thank you, Will.
I guess this kind of feeds into my second question because there was a bunch of people posting about how you had like disappeared on Facebook. Is that what was happening during that time?
Right.
Damn.
I ended up going to the hospital for, I guess, like a day and a half. And then because I was under arrest, I had to go through central booking for another 10 hours.
Did they take you through the tombs?
Right. Brooklyn tombs. So I had to go through, you go through the original precinct so they can fingerprint you and stuff. And then you go through central bookings, processing, holding. And then, the holding cells for going to court. Luckily, number one, I had a great public defender, legal aid guy, Daniel Ades. He's actually, the month he got my case, so just 2 weeks ago, he had to tell me that he was actually going private practice. That's how good he was. Like, he was so good. I mean, he gets my case called that same night. So I got out. I didn't have to. So usually, I've been through the system before. Well, yeah, you guys know I'm black and from New York. So you're like, yeah, I'll be. But yeah, no, if you don't get to see the judge during night court on a Friday night, you have to go through the weekend because there's no court on the weekend.
Right.
Which means that you get sent to Rikers Island.
Oh, shit.
And they don't, Yeah, you don't want to go to Rikers Island.
Yeah, no, from what I've heard, if they're looking to close it down, it can't be a great place to be.
It's not. Yeah, it's not. So this guy was really good, and then he was so smart, and he broke down the case to the judge and to the DA, in a very succinct way. And I'm confident that even if I don't have him actually for this next case, that what he's already established for my case record, I'm confident that they will get the same gist. That it's a case of misidentification.
Yes.
And that's basically it. I mean, the cops, look, do I like cops? No. But these cops were great. They didn't actually do anything wrong. It's the procedure they have to follow that's a little wrong, but it's not them. No one abused me. It's just a fucked up system.
Right.
It's not them. So this is just a case of misidentification, and to an extent, cops are trying to clear these cases like it's fucking candy or something,
Yeah.
a little investigation.
Just like have to get it done quick so we can move on to the next pile on the thing. Well, it's again very speaks to your character. You have this empathy built in not only for the person that robbed you, but also the cops who have to prosecute you.
But I will testify against that motherfucker though. This empathy has a limit.
Oh, absolutely. It's just like, I feel for you, but I'm throwing you under a very well-deserved bus.
Right.
And then after the bus gets off you, that's called personal growth.
Right. I might even dust you off a bit.
Yeah. Just be like, here's a glass of water. Now, go be better.
Right. Go be better, man. If anything, just be a better gangster, man. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, don't do it right.
Do it right.
Get away.
Can we add? My dad used to say, don't be sorry, be correct. You know what I mean? Like, do it right. How you cop is how you keep, homie.
Yeah. So you talk about this inherent tough guyness that says if you can't, someone steals for you, they gotta pay. Where do you think that comes from? Because I can identify it in myself. Sometimes I put a lot of effort into squashing it, because I don't have there's no I'm angry. Most people have never seen me angry, but I'm really angry. Holy shit. Yeah. So where do you think that comes from?
This is my libtard shit. I think there is definitely a real thing of toxic masculinity, and I think that it is an overrun and maybe even an inverse of what a patriarchal society really creates. Right? I think ideally as a man you think, well, if you even realize that we live in a patriarchy, but you do think, well, I benefit from this, right? All the things are established so that succession of wealth and power and direction is to me as a man, right?
Yeah.
We'll get into the race thing in a second because that has a play to it. But I want to just talk about just being men and that anger you feel, and I think that all of us feel. Toxic masculinity, I think, is one of the beginnings of that. And we only hear toxic masculinity said when we're thinking about feminism, or when we're thinking about the abuse of women, or we're thinking about rape, or misogyny or thing. But toxic masculinity, I think, it starts with men on men. It starts with fathers who don't know how to love. It starts with, and not to say that was my dad, but it just there's an idea of softness, homophobia, all these different things that creates a hardness and creates a resentment between you and the first few men that you ever experienced as a little boy.
Right, which are in most cases your dad or
the most important influential men in your life. But go ahead.
Yeah, your dad or brother, teacher, whoever. You get these are how you get these ideas of, how you're supposed to act as a man early on.
Right. And sometimes, and a lot of times, I think it's also the other little boys in your space, in your social circles. But then I have to now, as a 34-year-old man, knowing all the things I know about how little boys are raised, I know that a lot of the little boys that we grew up with, of course, they might have had great families and great dads, but it was still kind of abuse. It still was kind of they weren't allowed to be soft. A lot of little boys I grew up with were not allowed by their fathers or their uncles to be soft. If they even had fathers and uncles in their lives, and if they didn't, it was even worse because now they had to be the man of the house at 7 for their mother and for their sisters, and to be this fake tough guy.
Yeah.
And it's
because this idea of never showing weakness, or if things are going wrong, not showing that there's a problem. Because I think I've heard parents describe having to be like that, Or like I've heard people say that their parents are trying to project this aura of like everything's okay.
Right. And so if that's your idea of a man, if your idea of a man is this, thin piece of paper that has no emotion and can only be scary and or protective, then what does that evolve into and really devolve into as you become an older, more alone person? I mean, no one wants to admit it, but the older we get, the more alone we really are, because
I really do.
people die, people leave, people move, and I'm not trying to make anyone sad. I'm not trying to be a bummer here, but this is reality. And I think if you're left to your own devices, and your own devices are already toxic.
Yeah, if you have like your own, you're just swimming with your own thoughts, because again, as you get older, it becomes awkward to make friends as an adult. Like when you get into your 30s, just making a new friend,
you're not as open-minded anymore.
Yeah, you're set.
Right.
You're kind of set early on when by the time you get to that age.
So this anger, this global, but it's also a very Western thing. So I'm not going to include global, but for the purposes of our conversation right now, I will say that in America, the male aggression, the male anger has to do with that, has to do with this. I am a feminist, but I will say this, that the feminist argument is that the male idea of sexuality is a sense of entitlement. Well, you're damn right. But the reality is that entitlement is never actually served. The average dude that we know gets no pussy. The average dude that we know isn't walking through the world just high-fiving and thumbing up people. The average dude is getting shit on. The average dude isn't wearing the right jeans, doesn't have the right haircut, has too much scruff, has too little fat, has too little muscle, has too much fat, has too much muscle. Like, but the idea is, unlike being a woman, there are no magazines. Well, there may be a few, Men's Health or whatever, but the average dude isn't some dandy thing. It's not supposed to think about that, right? If you're so concerned with your tan and your pecs, how straight are you?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
How much of a man are you, right? You're some metrosexual now. But, at the same token, you being the regular sloth, lazy dude you are, is still gross and not sexually wanted. Yeah. So that's the average man in our country. And so if you expected that type of person to be happy and not be aggressive, I think you're living in a fucking fantasy land.
Yeah.
So now we go further than that. And I want to go on a little bit of a secondary diatribe, a shorter one though, about being a black American man.
Sure, yeah.
And so my inheritance is not from my father. My inheritance is rage from this country.
Right. From slavery.
From slavery, and maybe even before that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, my inheritance is a subhumanism. Whereas women were second-class citizens, and whereas Irish and Italian have immigration second-class citizen issues.
Yeah.
As a African American, my legacy is someone who has been fighting just to be considered human.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, put the fact that we live in a patriarchy and trying to find masculinity, trying to find a way to protect someone when you're not even human.
Yeah.
Find a way to own something when you're not even human.
Yeah. For the longest time, having no control over you, who you are, or your identity, or what you want to do with your life.
So every day, as a man in America, you're trying to find this idea that's not real, and you are on this journey for some type of power which is invented. And then as a black man in America, you are doing that, and on top of that, you have the consistent realization that no one respects you, and you can never achieve even the foundation of achieving that.
Yeah.
Which creates an anger, which creates an aggression, which creates an idea where, like, you know what? No one is going to give me shit, so I'm going to have to take it.
Right.
So when I was coming up as a little kid, especially coming up in an upper middle class black family in the middle of Harlem with a lot of poor people, like I said, like a city burned down in the urban areas.
Yeah.
I couldn't be Carlton Banks or Will Smith. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't be the Fresh Prince of Harlem. There was none of that. Like, you will get fucked up every day.
Right.
You have to be a tough guy. You have to hang out in the projects. You have to hang out with the I had to ingratiate myself, and it became something that I was entertained by and something that I was turned on by, was being a part of these gangs and part of this gang mentality, and being hood and being gutter and being respected as someone who was like from the streets. Even though I never had to sell, I did sell crack, but I didn't have to sell crack to get Jordans. My dad would just buy them for me. But I still sold crack so I could get the respect of everyone else.
Right.
And then usually spent the money on everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know what I mean?
Like a crack Robin Hood.
Shit, that's funny.
Yeah.
I wish. I don't think so though. But yeah.
No, I can, because I wonder if there's also certainly there's the rush of power that comes with that. The same way I'm thinking about the way, and maybe a similar way, certain people in call out culture nowadays. I bet there's a lot of people that call out shitty behavior because they are trying to be better people. But I think there's also some people that do because they want to feel righteous. Right. They want. There's a rush. Yeah. There's a rush to that. I also wonder if there's maybe like maybe like skydiving or bungee jumping. Like maybe there's a certain element of, or the idea of like you're going to go travel to North Korea. There's a certain danger element that's exciting.
Right. And this is why I go back to our earlier point about like people having to have these experiences to be able to do the thing.
Yeah.
You learn very quickly like I went to college for free because my father was a tenured professor at New School.
Yeah. So you went to New School. So you're New York through and through.
Through and through. But at the same token, I got caught up because I was selling blow, like through school. I was selling blow at the various clubs. You know what I mean? The New School is in the middle of downtown New York. So it's like, and I also hung out with like a bunch of people who like, you know, are in the music industry now and stuff. So there's like, you know, a lot of gay kids. And I mean, like, you know, cocaine. And like, I felt like the man. Yeah. And then I got locked up on Rikers Island for a month and a half.
Holy
and let me
shit.
tell you, you don't want to sell drugs anymore.
I bet not.
You don't want to go down. You know what I mean? Like, and so I think that experience is the best teacher. And there's times when I've had bullets whiz past my head. I've seen guys kill themselves with a gun. I've seen people murdered. I've shot guns at people, and you know, all those situations though.
That was in the past, Mr. DA. We're not talking about the recent.
Oh,
I'm kidding. I'm sorry.
But all those situations. Well, I will explain it right now. All those situations, though, they sounded so intensely amazing leading up to it, right? Like they sounded like, yeah, this is what I'm supposed to be doing, right? Like I'm supposed to be holding down my dudes, right? Like I'm supposed to be, you know, give me that. Let's go do this,
right?
But I'm pissing my pants. And then afterwards, I regret it. Like there's a pit deep in my stomach.
Yeah, like it doesn't feel good.
Yeah. You ever been so hungry that you could vomit?
Yeah.
There's nothing in there. That's how it feels after you do stuff like that.
Yeah,
because
just empty.
Empty. You didn't have to. You didn't want to. You were doing it to satisfy toxic masculinity. Yeah. And that's my point. Going back to the anger.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I guess having to come down from all that high of testosterone in a jail cell at Rikers.
It is sobering. So that's the guy that's always on my shoulder a little bit. This guy that I've had since I was about 11 years old. You know, who, and his voice is this guy that is dead now.
I was gonna say, how are you with it now, with that pull?
There was this guy Lo, and when I was like in the block that I grew up on, and I had claimed Crip. I was rolling 30 Crip, just with the kids, like just, you know, with my boys on the block. That was our set. That was our gang. And there were Bloods down on Foster projects. And anyway, Lo was this crazy wild dude, missing teeth, who ran the guys who sold weed and coke, weed and crack on 116th and 7th. And he put fear in everyone's heart. And I could tell you a million stories about these fantastic feats of guys, multiple men, trying to beat him up and trying to hurt him and trying to cut him and destroying them in front of your face, like on some action movie shit.
Yeah.
So I guess I was like 12 or 13, and there was a woman at the time. She was a little girl with me. We were both about the same age. She might have been like a year older than me.
Yeah.
So one night, she had come up to my dad's apartment and came to my room, and we made out or whatever. She didn't want to have sex with me, and which I was fine with.
Yeah.
You know, but I come back downstairs, and Alo walks up. I don't know how he knew, but he knew, and he says, "So what's good? So what happened?" Like, just real obnoxious, right? Like, and what he's asking is, "Did you guys fuck?"
Right.
Right. And I'm being Neruda. I'm being real chill, real cool, real bashful. Like, yo, it's not that. Boom. And he flips out, and he says, in front of everybody, he's just, "Oh, she ain't give you no pussy, word." Everybody's laughing, blah, blah, blah. And then he grabs her. He grabs her by the shirt and collar and drags her to this lot. And then he tells me, I better come along if I don't want to get the shit beat out of me. A lot more colorful than that. So we go to this lot, and back there he had keys to a van. Like a Winnebago type of van.
Right.
And so he makes us get in the back of the van. And then, he's smiling at me with his little toothless mouth, and he's just like, "Yeah, little gangsta Neruda, we gonna make you a man tonight," and all this stuff. And he pulls out a .38 revolver, and he starts to load it. And then he puts it to my head and cocks the hammer back, and he tells me to take off my pants. And then he put the same gun to her head and tells her to do that, and so on and so forth. And he basically forced us to have sex. I was in about 12.
Wow.
And I mean, none of my sexual experiences, even before, I wasn't a virgin at that time, but, according to niggas in the hood, you a virgin, whatever the fuck they want to call you that. But
yeah, they're they're going to make you whatever they want for their purposes at that time.
Right. So, none of my experiences before that were all that healthy, but this was one of the most damaging ones. And he forced me to rape this woman and basically rape both of us.
Right. Because the situation neither of you wanted to be in.
Right. And you're not, number one, he's crazy. And number two, he's got a loaded gun with, 6 bullets in it. So that happened. And then about 4 years later.
So you're 16 at this point. So I can't imagine, I don't know how many other people know about that, but just having to carry around that experience has got to be a tremendous weight.
You know what's funny? It's a tremendous weight now. And I don't know what it was then, because there was so much stuff that happened between the ages of 7 and 23 for me that that's like one strand of a lot of shit.
From like carrying on. What years were you in college?
I was in college. I went to college late. I went to college at 23. And so I'm going to explain that right now.
Yeah. Okay.
So cut to 4 years later, we're hanging out, me, Alo, and some other people. And we're watching Faces of Death. Didn't you remember?
I've heard of it, yeah. I've seen clips on YouTube. That's like it is maybe real, but maybe isn't. I think I saw someone get the gas chamber in it, someone get their head cut off. Yeah. I'm familiar.
Well, at this time, we were watching it on VHS, so we all thought it was real. And, obviously, if that guy was crazy when I was 12, imagine him at this point, right? All the drugs and violence.
Yeah.
He was mentally unhealthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't, you talk about my empathy. I don't have any empathy for him. I have empathy for his baby moms, and you know who you are, baby, and the
people around
him. You all know who you are. I have empathy for y'all, but I don't have empathy for him. Fuck him. So one day he got a little bit too crazy, and he starts playing Russian roulette with us. And when I say he starts playing with us, obviously we weren't trying to play.
Right.
And he's loading it, one bullet, spinning, pointing it at us, clicking, pointing at us, clicking. And then in order to prove that, he wasn't scared, he loads it, rolls it, pulls it at himself.
Mm-hmm.
And it just happened that one went through his fucking head.
And you saw that. Holy shit.
And then I started dating a woman that was 8 years older than me. And my dad wanted to bring her up on statutory rape charges. But we ended up having a kid. And now I have a 14-year-old daughter named Zaya.
And what's your relationship with her like?
It's great, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like my relationship with my dad, you have to ask her to hear the real truth. But I think it's great.
Yeah. Wow, man. I've known you for several, I don't know how long, like maybe 5 or 6 years probably. Now at this point, you're like, this is not going to do a service this is not going to be a proper metaphor, but I'm imagining like the guy from 300 who comes back with one eye to tell this story.
I mean, I don't think it's that.
That's how I'm viewing you as. And
I appreciate you, man.
Man, well, I'm glad that you're here and relatively at managing some of this stuff, because I have a feeling that most people probably couldn't handle that as gracefully as you do.
I appreciate the compliments, man. At the same token, we look at what happened with Kate Spade recently, and
yeah,
I was with my daughter and her mother until my daughter was about 5 or 6, and when her mother was like, "Hey, I need a man," like, you know what I mean, like, you're a kid, that's why I went to college late.
Yeah.
And I need a man. And when they left, I was heartbroken, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if Tiana knows this, and I'm pretty sure Zaya doesn't know this, but at that point in time, that was my whole reason for living.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I'm never going to be my brother. Like, I'm never going to be that talented. I'm never going to be that, culturally relevant. And, my brother was just this darling of the neighborhood of the city, and so I pale in comparison to him. I'm never going to be my dad. I didn't have to dig myself up out of the muds of Mississippi, and, and then both of those people have always been too busy for me. And, I'm never going to be any of these gangsters that I look up to as a kid. And then seeing Aloe die changed my whole perspective on what life is, what life was, and what being that guy. Do I want to be that guy? No.
No. Yeah.
So Zaya and Tiana, the reason why I told my dad to drop the charges for statutory rape on Zaya's mother was because I thought we were going to be together forever. Like,
right.
This was my purpose, was to be a dad.
Yeah. And that's why you went to college with that in mind.
Right. That was my singular focus. And so when they leave, it took the wind out of everything. I never finished school. I never,
And what were you studying again?
Oh,
I know we've talked about it a bunch.
But you do want to get into this. So this is a good thing that you're great at this. Yeah, I studied. I was a major media studies at Eugene Lang, and I minored in fashion history at Parsons. But yeah, so it took the life, And this will also explain, this is good. You're really good at this. This will also explain why I dropped out. So yeah, so it took the life out of me, literally.
Yeah.
And one day, I go to Tiana's apartment, and she had changed the locks. And so I went up to the roof, climbed down the fire escape, and I saw her with this other guy.
Yeah.
And I jumped off the fire escape.
You were trying to kill yourself?
Yeah. And I caught myself on the first floor, but it still was like 40 feet or 30 feet from the ground. So the woman who lived in that apartment saw me and called the cops.
Oh my God. This literally as if your day could not get any worse.
Right. But it was great though, because the fire department comes and they give you that little ladder. Right. And they took me to Mount Sinai psych ward, and I was there for like, I don't know, 2-3 weeks or something.
Involuntary.
Involuntary. Until my depression subsided and they felt that I wasn't a danger to myself or others. And that, to me, correlates with the Kate Spade thing. It's like, she just had made like $1 billion. Like, her company had just gotten sold to Coach. That don't mean nothing.
No, it doesn't.
Like, her husband was leaving her, I believe, is what the situation was.
I think so.
And when you feel like everything that you've done and everything that you live for, if I have any advice for someone going through something similar, it's that you got to start living for yourself. But if you feel like that person in your life is everything that you're doing all this for, if you're going to these open mics so that you can if you're doing for all your goals so that you can make this other person, you're going to be disappointed. And I need you to be prepared for that. And do I have a problem with someone taking their lives? Obviously not. Sometimes I think, you know what? Do it if you need to do it. I don't want to encourage people to commit suicide, but I also don't want to be that person that shames people for doing it.
Right.
But if everything around you is solely focused on others and not internally, at some point, I think it will lead you there. It will lead you to think, well, if this person doesn't want me, what good am I?
Right. Because you're not chasing any internal satisfaction.
Right.
Your satisfaction's dependent entirely on someone else, which is uncontrollable.
Right. I have to say it into the mic because I forget that people are going to be listening.
Right.
If this was just a conversation between me and Will, I mean, he knows that I appreciate his points.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So what was the thing? Did you have a moment when you decided that you were you're doing something for you? What was that thing? If you ended up dropping out, was comedy the thing, or was there something else?
It wasn't comedy. I wasn't even thinking about comedy yet. So Tiana came to visit me in the psych ward. My cousin Akimi, my brother's basically sister in a way, his mother's sister's daughter, right? Yuri only has, I think, 2 daughters, and so Akimi was a big part of my life, and so she came to visit me. A couple people came to visit me in that psych ward. Like, look, you're never going to convince somebody that doesn't want to live that their life is worth living. That's not how that works.
Yeah, they have to decide.
Right. But one thing that I did realize was that there was more to life than just how I was feeling at the moment.
Right.
You know? And on top of that, and this would save me, I don't want this to save everybody because I think that sometimes it shouldn't, but this saved me was just knowing that, you know, my kid was like 6, 7, and I wanted to see her like right now.
Yeah.
I wanted to see her, you know,
be a teenager and
find a boyfriend
and like put the fear of God in him a little bit.
I'm actually super cool. Actually, Tiana is always like, dude, you're too cool a parent and you make my life harder. But you know what? Fuck you, dude. You left. That's my job now. My job is
You seem like a cool dad.
Yeah, but it's the worst because there's also like a little bit of pettiness. Like, a word, your engineer mom don't want you to do that. Come do that over here all you want. It's like, well, she can't just eat candy and fuck her boyfriend in your apartment. No, but
Yeah, no, yeah, there's that sort of competition element. I'm familiar with that.
you know. So, but anyway, yeah. But that definitely helped, was knowing that Tiana was like, yo, I don't want to see you dead.
Mm-hmm.
I want, and it made me grow up too. Like, she wanted an adult in her life,
Yeah.
and she needed that. My daughter needed that. It couldn't. I mean, as much as I loved being a stay-at-home dad and stuff like that, but this would have never happened in our apartment.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, my daughter now, you know, she goes to a very prestigious private boarding school, and she's amazing. And I can't afford none of that shit,
Yeah.
but her stepdad can.
Right.
And, yo, Chris is dope. He's not a bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
And actually,
That's important.
it's important. And actually, the little bit of him that I think is corny is also important, because I don't want him to be too fucking cool, because then you end up with a nigga like me. So, so yeah.
You don't want her dating like a rock and roll drummer.
I don't give a fuck if she's dating a rock and roll drummer. I don't want her stepdad to be a rock and roll drummer. I want him to be an accountant.
Mm-hmm.
I want him to pay that motherfucking rent and that tuition.
Right.
I don't give a fuck. That's why I'm the cool dad, though, because I don't really have to give a fuck of who she brings back home.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly. You
And
can
if-
be the one that she calls when
Right.
you've like, oh, all right, I've been through this. Here's how we're getting you out.
Right. And if he does something wrong, I'm the dude. Chris is not the dude, but I'm the dude that's going to come crack his jaw.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so she's Gucci. And without that third wild card, some of us don't grow up right.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're right. There's a little bit of a little bit of a, if I can make a metaphor, if you're sucked up into a tornado
Right.
for a while, when the eye stops, you really appreciate being grounded.
Yes. I
If
think
I
that's
can
my
think-
life right there.
If I can think of anything. Well, fuck, dude, you have an incredible life story that I didn't know about.
Well, isn't that why you invited me?
Yes. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I love learning, because like I have this moment so many times. Like, I feel like I really know people, and especially like the people
Me
I'm
too.
around, like the comedy scene, but I don't really.
Right. Me too. Yeah.
I don't really know anybody. So like, and you can kind of get to know somebody on stage, but you're getting like the
What they
toned-
want, yeah.
the best possible, funniest version.
Mm-hmm.
There's a certain I'm hoping not forgotten beauty to a longer conversation and like really knowing someone.
Yeah.
I think
You're doing a very good job with this. You're doing a good job at life, Will.
I'm trying, Neruda. I thank you. I appreciate
Thank
it,
you,
man.
bro.
This has been great. I feel like there's so much more we could talk about. So the next time we do this, I'll come to you.
Yeah, there might have to be another one. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's definitely more to this, but I think what we definitely have got from this is that we are going to do a production of Your Dad's Play again.
Right. I think that's the thing. Yeah.
That's going to happen.
That's gonna work.
I'll audition, but I'll just read. I'll just read for people. I'll be the guy at the desk.
I think you should definitely do some things, but also maybe just run tech. You want to run tech?
Yeah, hell yeah,
I'm just
dude.
saying, Marcus, you brought up a venue already. Like you might be a producer on this. Actually.
Yeah, dude, I'm on board.
All right.
I'll be in the booth. I'll call 5 minutes to curtain.
Right.
I'll do all that shit.
I love it.
Dude, let's make this happen.
Thank you for having me, Will.
Thank you, Neruda. Thank you, folks. That's the show for the week. If you want to follow us on Twitter, I'm at Comic Will Carry. I want to thank Neruda Williams for sharing his life and being a gracious, accommodating guest. And he's a great guy and a very funny guy. So I hope that you guys have him on, want to have him on your shows. And I don't have too much else to say. I think this one kind of speaks for itself. So if you guys have feedback on this episode, you know where to find me. And I will see you guys next week between Awesome and Disaster. Take care, everyone.